All right, I think it's time to get started with the webinar. Welcome, everyone. My name's Ian Scared. I'm the head of marketing at FlowFuse, and welcome to our September webinar. We're really pleased for the webinar content this month. Node-RED is 10 years old, so we think it's important to celebrate, and that's what we're going to do today. But also, we're going to look kind of what's new in 3.1, the most recent release, and what's the plans for the community. I'm thrilled to have Nick O'Leary, CTO of FlowFuse and co-creator of Node-RED, to join us to lead us through this session. So Nick, welcome. Can you just go to the next slide? Just before we get into it, we always welcome people to introduce themselves in the chat pod. It's always great to see where people are calling in from. Just as a reminder, this session is being recorded, and we will send a link to everyone who's registered for the webinar. And final, there'll be time at the end for lots of Q&A. Please ask questions in the Q&A chat pod at the Q&A pod at the bottom. Don't ask them in the chat pod because it's too hard to keep track of them. Okay. All right, Nick, over to you. So, and congratulations on 10 years. That's a great accomplishment.
I know. Well, thank you very much, Ian. Great to see so many of you joining here today. Looking through the attendee, lots of familiar names in that list, but also, yeah, just great to see so many people from the community. And yeah, 10 years. I wonder where the time has gone often. When I sort of look back at where it all began, I guess where it all began publicly, if you like, was the very first commit in the source code repository on GitHub, 5th of September 2013. So yeah, we're 10 years and a week, or a week or two old. But really, for those who have heard the Node-RED story before, know actually Node-RED, as long before we called it Node-RED, started in January that year as this little side project, this little playing around with technologies between myself and Dave Conway-Jones, when we both worked at IBM's Emerging Technologies Group. And even just the journey in that, what was it, sort of 8 months or so, going from just playing around with some ideas with some code to creating a tool that we found super useful really quickly, navigating the IBM process to open source it, yeah, and getting it out into the world in September that year. I mean, we had no idea what we had started. We knew we had something that was useful. It was fun. We were actively using it for real work, even in its very early days. But we also recognized we kind of needed to build more of a community around it and get it into the hands of a lot of our friends in the MQTT world, in the IoT space, who we really thought would enjoy what we had created. But yeah, if you'd asked me now, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, where would we be now? I don't think I would have predicted a lot of the success that we've had with Node-RED. It's in GitHub. You can check out that very first commit. I will admit, I spent a bit of time earlier today trying to run it, but trying to find the right version of Node.js from 10 years ago and various other bits of digital bit rot that inevitably happens. I couldn't get it running, but I did find this screenshot that does very much go back to some of the very early days, long before we supported third-party nodes, subflows, even it was just one workspace. All these sort of things we kind of take for granted. It's always fun to go back to some of these old screenshots and just see, in some ways, how far it's come, but also, a lot of the visual identity of Node-RED was, the seeds were sown back in those days. And here we are 10 years later. So we've done 129 releases across sort of major releases, fixed releases, beta releases. I'm not going to read out all these numbers, but you can see thousands of commits. We've got a couple hundred contributors to the project, and these numbers are all just in the core of Node-RED. So there are dozens of other repositories within the Node-RED organization. When you look at all the extra nodes that we maintain in the project ourselves, and lots of other bits and pieces that support the project. So, these numbers are much higher once you factor in all of those as well. That community of nodes, we've gone from, I think when we first started, we had a few dozen nodes in the palette, all hard-coded. We then did the work to allow them to be plugged in and for people to self-publish. And here we have, over 4,500 third-party nodes contributed by the community, constantly adding new functionality, enabling Node-RED to connect to new things, do new things with Node-RED. It's incredible to see. We have over 1 million pulls of the Docker images every month, and Docker does give you sort of the raw number of how many pulls, but it's just such a large number, it's almost meaningless. I think it's much more meaningful to say, every month over 1 million pulls are happening of the Docker images. Our community forum, which is one of the real strengths of Node-RED and its strength, we've got over 20,000 users in the forum. I think there's close to 100 posts on the forum daily, according to the dashboard. People signing up all the time. It's a really vibrant, helpful community. And again, I think I appreciate, for those who have seen me do these types of talks before, and I always want to make this point, I think a lot of the success of Node-RED is down to the community, and both the contribution the community's made in code, in adding nodes, but also just the support the community gives each other in the forum, helping each other be successful with Node-RED. And it's awesome to see. And it's one of the many bits I'm super proud of what we've been able to create over these last 10 years. And we also look, this is just a screenshot from the Node-RED homepage, a whole bunch of companies who are using Node-RED in some form. And again, this is probably just a very small sliver. These are the ones who have offered up their identity to be shared on the Node-RED homepage. I know countless others who are using Node-RED, who across a broad range of industries and domains. And again, it's awesome to see for all the fun we have for the individuals doing the home automation and the fun projects with it. Just the sheer volume of companies doing real work with Node-RED is a real, again, tribute to what we've built. The community, I talk a lot about it. One of the activities we've done this year is our 2023 community survey. We'd run one in 2019, and so we thought it was overdue for us to run another instance of it to get a feel for what's the community look like. And just for those who participated, thank you for taking the time to respond. The survey sort of covered a wide range of topics of just trying to understand how Node-RED's being used, who's using it, and get feedback right across the project. So we got, I think, 780 responses, which is a decent number. So these numbers do feel like they have some bearing behind them. And I've just picked out some of the areas. There's a whole bunch more. There is a link on these slides, and you can find it on the Node-RED website if you want to deeper dive. So asking, in what capacity do people use Node-RED? Roughly half for personal use. But what I think super interesting is, although it's sort of split up into a group of categories, there's just under half are using it professionally. So it is being used, again, for real productive work, real commercial activity being built on and around Node-RED. When we look at what types of applications people have created, again, home automation with Home Assistant, that type of thing, is a super strong response. Creating dashboards, super common type of behavior. Hopefully it may come across in the screen share. There's a light red bar and the dark red bar. So the light red is the responses we got at the previous survey, so you can see a bit of a change. So much of the responses are fairly consistent. I think what is certainly interesting to see, the third from the bottom there, is around the industrial IoT, PLC type workloads. A big jump there in where people are using Node-RED in those sorts of settings, far away from the home. And it's awesome to see. And then it's always nice to see it's going to be slightly self-selecting, but just the strength of response. How would you rate Node-RED? Such a strong response. I feel I should qualify. This was out of 1 to 5. This wasn't a 1 to 10 and everyone's stuck in the middle. No, this was out of 1 to 5. How do people rate Node-RED? And again, it's we in the project get feedback from the community in all sorts of different ways, but seeing a response like that is, again, really great to see, and supportive of the work we're doing, and again reflects on, I think, a very positive nature of the Node-RED community. So thank you to everyone who's responded, and thanks to everyone who's played their part over the last 10 years of helping Node-RED become what it has become. I will just add, the partner in crime, Dave Conway-Jones, co-inventor of Node-RED, was hoping to be able to be here, but unfortunately couldn't be here. Otherwise, he would sure be here to say hello. But he does send his regards and echoes a lot of what I was saying. Thanks to the whole community for helping build what's been created. So I want to shift gears a little bit. So that's a lot of the past. And again, I've talked through that history many times before. Looking more at the here and now, Node-RED 3.1. So Node-RED 3.1 was released the start of this month. In fact, looking at the dates, it was released actually on that 10-year anniversary of that first commit on GitHub. Now, when we reflect on 3.1, this is our existing published release plan, and I've put a dotted line there to show where on the timescales we are currently sat in terms of time. And the original intention was 3.1 was planned for the end of last year, and that by now we would be well into the Node-RED 4 stream, and this hasn't happened, evidently. Now, we did publish this with a slight disclaimer saying dates are subject to change, and I think it's fair to reflect on the fact they did change. So I think for a whole variety of reasons, the 3.1 release kind of got a little stuck, if you like, in terms of just trying to get it finished off, get it shipped. We did the first beta release of it back in February to try and get it unblocked, and that was super successful. We hoped it would be the only beta release we did, but in the end, I think we did 4 beta releases with no reflection of the quality of that beta release. Just in some ways, doing the beta release unlocked some other contributions, and we found ourselves with some other great features coming in. And anyway, we got there. We got 3.1 released, and the release blog post is out there. I was going to do a super quick demo, just a tour of some of the stuff for those of you perhaps haven't tried it out yet. I mean, I've highlighted here some of the headline features, but I'm going to switch over if I can navigate smoothly. Over to so here we have a Node-RED 3.1 instance. Perhaps if I go a bit bigger. So a lot of the changes in 3.1 are some usability features and just improving the developer experience in general. So, and some of them are quite small, but I think they all add up. So one of the things we have built on that was already in the 3.0 release is a much improved context menu. So now there's a whole ton more stuff you can access via this context menu, right-clicking. It's context sensitive, so if you click on a node, you get a different set of options. You can even click on the tab bar and get actions relative to the tab bar. Now, again, I've sort of said before, a context menu kind of feels like, oh, well, so what? But it's those little things that just help improve the overall usability. Something else we've changed or introduced now is this workspace that you can add nodes is much bigger. Now, for many users, it's doesn't really matter how big this workspace is, but because it is pretty huge. I think previously it was about like 5,000 pixels square, but we would still occasionally get people saying, I haven't got enough space for all my nodes. Now, I think traditionally we've kind of said, well, have you considered adding tabs rather than trying to fit everything in one place? But even so, there are users who have their needs. So we've grown the workspace. So it's you've got even more space to build your flows in. Another little thing we've added is you'll be familiar whenever you add nodes or change nodes, they get little change notifications. The tabs now have change notifications as well. So that's super useful if, say, if I just deploy this, I've got a couple of tabs. Now I go and make some changes over here. Then I'm in here making changes, but I look and think, well, I can't see any changes here. Now, previously, you'd have no hints where are your changes, what's been changed. So now it's much easier to spot where you've got things going on. Something else we've taken away in this UI for 3.1 is we had introduced the ability to hide tabs. Perhaps you have lots of tabs and it gets very cluttered and you want to be able to, well, hide them. Previously, whenever you hovered over the tab, we would show a little eye icon that would let you hide them. Now, it worked, it was serviceable, but we kind of got the feedback, both from our own experience and from people in the community, that it was just too easy to accidentally click that, make the tab disappear and not realize you'd done it, or then wonder where it's gone. So we've got rid of that button because it was just too easy to accidentally click. But what you can now, you can right click and you can hide flows here. We've got the drop down menu that gives you all the options to hide. And over here in the info sidebar, you've got the hide button as you did before. So the functionality is still there. We've just slightly tweaked how you access it to reduce the surprises that people were getting trying to use it. And the eagle-eyed amongst you might notice I've got some tabs hidden for other bits of this demo, so I'll come to those in a moment. I'm just going to delete that tab to get out of the way. Something else we've added, well, we've overhauled, is how groups work in the editor. So groups, if you've not seen it, it's not too surprising. You can create a group of nodes. You can come in, you can give it lots of colors and labels and the like, and it's a nice way of organizing and labeling your work in the editor. Now, in previous versions of Node-RED, I don't think we'd quite got the way you interact in the editor with the groups right. It was very much a case of, to edit this node, you'd first have to click to activate the group and then click again to get to the node. And yeah, it was a lot of clicking and it wasn't necessarily intuitive. So with 3.1, we've completely overhauled it. So now you can still just, access and modify these nodes, interact with these nodes directly. You can select the group by clicking on the group edge itself. It's basically we've reduced clicking, and that's a good thing, and it's much more intuitive to use. And then there are things like, if I just create another little flow down here, it's little things like I can now drag a whole flow and add it to the group, whereas previously you could only add one thing at a time. And then we've also added the ability, if when you're dragging, you press the Alt key, you can actually drag things out of a group. So whereas before you could drag things in, but there was no easy way to drag them out with a mouse. Pressing and holding Alt when you drag removes it from the group. Again, it's these little touches that just make the editor experience a bit more intuitive. Other things around groups, we have the catch nodes. We have the catch node that lets you handle errors. So if I'm just going to get rid of that group because we don't need it. Let me delete that catch node and just deploy. If I switch to our debug, so the flow I've got here is an inject node and a function node. This function node is calling node.error. It's throwing an error on purpose. And you can see over here, we get the error in the sidebar. And we've got the catch node that lets you handle those errors. So I'm just going to just configure that debug node. So this catch node, when I inject this error, this message has now come out of the debug node because it's been caught by the catch node and gone to the debug node. Now, this node has been configured to catch errors from all nodes on this tab. With the group functionality now, I can drop a catch node into that group and give it its own debug node. We want error.message. And now I can configure this catch node to catch just errors from the same group. So when I deploy that, now when I inject this error, in fact, it's getting caught by both because they are both in scope. And in fact, I should be able to tell this one, ignore errors handled by other catch nodes. If I clear debug, and now if I inject, I just get the one message. And you can see this has come from debug 3. So it's come from the catch node inside the group. So that scoping, again, gives you more flexibility, more ability to organize your error handling. A couple other features I'm going to quickly whiz through. Environment variables. Before I go there, you can set environment variables at various levels. For example, the group, I can add an environment variable, and then that's available to all the nodes inside the group. I can do that at the tab level. So I can define environment variables accessible to all nodes in the tab. If I wanted to set something that was available across all tabs, that previously you'd have to do via your settings file, which means editing files, which means restarting Node-RED and all that. So with this release, you can now come into your settings tab and there's an environment tab. And here you can define environment variables that will be available everywhere. Again, and then they get saved within your flow. So it's all part of your Node-RED application. Again, just trying to provide flexibility and lots of different ways or configuration options across the board. Next one I want to highlight is mermaid charts. So let me bring in the mermaid chart tab. So mermaid charts are a way to describe charts, all sorts of charts, flow charts and like, in text. And they're super useful. If you want to document sort of sequences of events, Gantt charts, all sorts of examples of charts. And for example, GitHub have recently added support for including mermaid charts in GitHub, and it's all done in Markdown, and we now have support for them. So here I've got some comment nodes, which if I open up, you can see I've got a bit of mermaid syntax in a mermaid code block. And you can see down here in the info sidebar, you get the rendered mermaid chart. So here, I've got these examples are all straight from the mermaid docs. They just literally copy and paste it over. So flowcharts, sequence diagrams, Gantt diagrams, class diagrams. I've not seen this one. I've obviously not scrolled far enough down in the mermaid docs until today, but the ability to do git graph charts. But yeah, if we just open up, they're all defined in text, so they can all be sort of saved in the flow. And wherever you add documentation, whether it's a comment node, whether it's on the flow, it just gives you more options for adding richer content and richer documentation for your flows. Let me see now. Let me just check back on my notes. You know what? I think I've covered most of what I wanted to talk about, except for one, which I've just spotted on that list. So let's go back. So one of the other things we've added is the ability to lock flows. So locking a flow is as simple as just selecting the lock flow option, or when you open up its edit dialog, it's got this little toggle at the bottom, and I can lock it. Once locked, I can't make any changes to this flow. See, if I drag something on, it doesn't drop. You can select stuff, but I can't double click. I can't edit. None of these are working. Oh, mostly none are working. I can't interact with those nodes in the editor. I can't make changes. It is literally locked. Now, this is kind of a step one in a possible series of enhancements in the editor. But right now, the idea here is, let's say you're building flows where you've perhaps got what you might consider mission critical flows that you don't want to accidentally make a modification and hit deploy. So you can lock that flow, and it will prevent you accidentally changing anything. You can get on with your work in other tabs. You can deploy freely. If you decide you want to make a change, then you can come and very consciously unlock it, then make your changes and lock it again. So that's what's available in 3.1. Part of this concept was a longer term roadmap of if you've got authentication enabled, could we get to a point where only certain users are allowed to edit certain tabs? Is part of the possible future. We haven't got specific plans or designs for this, but it's kind of conceptually where this could go. Now we have the ability to lock tabs in the editor. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what feedback we get from the community, whether the level of functionality we have now is useful. It's a nice idea, but does it get used in practice? But yeah, so as ever, with everything I'm showing you, and as I've talked about community, your feedback is we thrive on, and it's your feedback that helps us decide what makes sense to do next. So do let us know if you play with these features. Let us know what you think. So I think that's all of, those are the main features. As I say, it's all on the Node-RED blog. You can see more details about all those features. And please do jump in the forum for any of the feedback you have. Something else we have just done, in fact, just published this week from us at FlowFuse, is adding previews of flows to the Flow library. Now, I want to acknowledge Garrett in the Node-RED community, who set out to build a Flow viewer. So this is a standalone bit of code. It doesn't reuse code from Node-RED, that you can give it FlowJSON, and it generates basically renders the flow. So we at FlowFuse have taken what he's done, and we've contributed back to the Node-RED Flow library. So now all of the flows on the Flow library get a rendered view of their flow. And it's not just a static image. If I find the right tab, for example, here. So whereas previously you would just get the JSON in the page, you now get the rendered view. But this is zoomable. You navigate around it. If there are multiple tabs, subflows, they all get listed, and you can switch between them. And you can copy the JSON straight to your clipboard from here. And that's cool. It looks great. It's early days. So at the moment, it doesn't know about the true appearance of all the contrib nodes in the library. So, for example, you can see this white one down here without an icon. So initially, a lot of third-party nodes will appear with this sort of generic appearance, but we're looking at how we can improve the integration with the Flow library to pull out more of that information so we can improve the fidelity of the renders. But this is a couple of days old, and I'm sure you'll see some rapid improvements. But one of the really cool things is we've added this share flow option in the Flow library. So for every flow in the library, you can click this, and it gives you some HTML, a little bit of an iframe that you can copy, at which point you can then include that in a blog post, in a forum post, in an article, wherever you want. So if I switch over to the FlowFuse blog, where we talk about the work we did to enable this, you can see in the middle of the blog post, we have got flows just inline in the article, hosted from the Flow library. They all link back to the flow on the Flow library. And again, I can copy the JSON, but it just makes where you want to document work you're doing with Node-RED so much richer to have a rendered version of the flow as well as the JSON, without having to resort to creating lots of static snapshots. And I'd say, again, if it's a complicated flow with lots of tabs, that they will all be there to allow people to navigate. So yeah, it's super cool. It's super clean. Big thanks to Garrett from the community for. I would admit, this it's a bit of code I've long since wanted to do, but I've never quite knuckled down to just get it done. And absolute credit to Garrett, who just knocked it out in a weekend or two of hacking away, and he's done a brilliant job. And yes, we're looking at continuing to help evolve it to be, well, just continue being super useful. So that's the Flow viewers. And let me go back to my slides. So that's that, and that's that, all the stuff I just talked about. Excuse me. I want to talk a bit about Dashboard 2.0. So there's been a conversation in the community for a long time about Node-RED Dashboard, the set of nodes that we maintain in the Node-RED project that give you sort of interactive dashboards for your data, knowing that it's kind of been built on a out-of-date legacy technology with no good upgrade path that kind of leaves those nodes in maintenance mode and hard to justify investing more time in. So we at FlowFuse have a sponsoring activity around creating a new generation of dashboard. Now, there are other dashboard projects in the community, UI Builder, FlexDash, and others that are all awesome. They solve slightly different sets of problems, perhaps, to what the core of Node-RED does, all for good reason. And everything has their own sets of strengths and weaknesses. We've chosen to get a set of nodes that are as closely aligned to the original dashboard, so they are familiar in terms of how they work and how they're structured, but also then built on a basis that we can move forward with. So I know we've been sharing this in the community, dashboard.flowfuse.com. There's a great site for documentation of it all. These are some screenshots of dashboards. It should be all very familiar, but Joe's already done some great work around some additional features that aren't in the original dashboard, like a notebook layout for those familiar with like Jupyter Notebook type things, where you just want to have sort of pages of widgets in that sort of notebook format, and other things like that. So it's still beta level, but it's a lot of the functionality is there already, and it's moving fast. And again, a huge thanks to the community who have responded so positively to it and are busy testing it and helping provide that feedback and contributing back to it. Double checking where I'm going next on my slides, because I will just quickly show you that. So again, if I unhide my FlowFuse dashboard, so if I look at the palette of nodes, for those familiar with the original Node-RED dashboard, you'll see a very similar set of nodes to what you've had. If I fire over to my dashboard here, so this is the new notebook view. It's a flow. This is a flow that, what are we doing? We go and get npm download stats and does the work to present it in a chart. So if I hit refresh, so these are the download stats of the FlowFuse Node-RED dashboard on a daily basis. This node, excuse me, this node down here is a markdown node. So in the old dashboard, we have the template node that lets you drop in raw HTML, and you can basically build anything you wanted at the low level raw HTML. What we've done in this dashboard is we don't have that low level template node yet. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, there is a template node, But as an alternative that will actually be perhaps in some ways more useful is the Markdown node. So here's a node where I can write content in Markdown, but I can still stick in inserts that will be dynamically set by the messages being passed. So on here, a chart is about this data, and it tells me how many downloads there are, and that number is calculated dynamically. So when I clear it, it says unknown. I refresh and it inserts the number. Super simple, super clean, and just doing what the dashboard is great at doing, of being able to create visualizations of data. I think there's some great examples on the FlowFuse blog and in the documentation for the project that are definitely worth checking out, and it's really exciting to see where that goes. And I will add, my colleague Joe will be doing one of these webinars dedicated to the whole dashboard project in the near future, next month. So look out for that if you want to learn more. And exciting to see where that goes. So that's where we are today. So talked about the community survey we've done this year, Node-RED 3.1 we've done this year, the Flow previews and the Flow library, the FlowFuse dashboard 2.0, all great stuff. I want to talk a little bit about what's next, and what are we thinking about what's coming up. So as the slide says, what's next? And the elephant in the room is this release plan. Basically, it needs updating, and we need to get our release plan back into some shape and order, because there's no hiding from the fact we're behind. We're quite a long way behind our intended plan. But this plan was always built on a whole bunch of caveats in terms of resource, time, being an open source project, all the sorts of things that can just get in the way of a well-intended plan. One of the things that we can't ignore are those bars at the bottom, which is Node.js. So Node-RED, we run on Node.js. The Node.js project are continually doing new releases. They drop support for old versions, make new releases. And in fact, if we look at their current release schedule, you can see here the only maintained versions of Node these days, as of when was it? Earlier this month. The only maintained versions of Node are Node 18 and Node 20. So Node 16 was originally planned to be supported until next April in maintenance mode, but for well-documented reasons within the project, they brought its end of life much sooner. So Node 16 has gone, and so at this point, as we evaluate, the original plan for Node-RED 4 would have been for us to drop Node 14, but keep Node 16 until its end of life and keep rolling forward. Well, Node 16 has already reached its end of life. So when we look at what's the headline for Node-RED 4.0, it isn't, it's never been the case that, major version number must mean major new features. For us, using semantic versioning, 4.0 means we're making a breaking change. And for us, a breaking change is we're dropping support for old versions of Node.js. And it means for example, our default Docker images will change from being based on Node 14, which they are today, to being based on Node 18. So for anyone who's pulling the latest tag from Docker, will suddenly find themselves on a brand new version of Node. And that could be a breaking change for some people in some environments. So Node-RED 4.0 is primarily going to be about just that routine maintenance of dropping support for the old versions of Node. There are a small number of potentially breaking changes, which we always try to minimize, and they're all tend to be very focused, specific things that we are currently evaluating to release as part of 4.0 as well. One is the CSV node. so the node for parsing and generating CSV data. Basically, the current implementation works, but there's a growing number of edge cases where it doesn't work as expected. So there's a plan to make the CSV node properly RFC compliant in terms of the data it generates and how it handles data it's passed. Now, there might be some flows out there that take advantage of its existing behavior and take advantage of its non-compliance. So we're currently evaluating how do we get the CSV node to be compliant. Do we make that just a breaking change? Do we provide some legacy support for existing behavior? We're trying to figure it out. But if we are going to make a breaking change, it will be in 4.0. Secure by default is a topic that has been discussed around a few times. It's not one specific change, but it's looking at essentially should a clean install of Node-RED be secured rather than being left unsecured, in the sense of should it have a login to access the editor by default, rather than just having it open by default. Now, it sounds easy. The difficult thing is if we just define a default username and password, well, if everyone knows the default, then that's not secure. So we're looking at some options, for example, the installer script we have, making some updates to that to enable the username and password security in the editor as part of the install. There's basically a whole bunch of areas in that topic. We're just trying to think through, trying to make sure there's zero impact for existing users who are just upgrading. We don't want to suddenly lock them out of their system at all. But certainly for clean new installs, how can we improve that default security posture? And then another potentially breaking set of changes around the HTTP request node. Its support for HTTP proxies. We've identified some gaps in its support and some misbehaviors, if you like, even of its behaviors. So yeah, we want to take a good hard look at it, and if that could lead to some changes in behavior if you have HTTP proxy set up locally. So again, for the vast majority of users, completely irrelevant, but for those who need it, well, we want to make sure it works properly. And if it requires a slight change in the existing behavior, then again, we need to consider it in the context of a major version. But the point here is, these aren't big features. These are quite small pieces of work. And frankly, I'm hopeful, but I'm not, I've learned the lesson. I'm not going to put a date on it, but certainly Node-RED 4.0 in the next couple of months, because we need to move up the Node.js version because Node 16 has already reached its end of life. So we aren't going to hang around for a long time on this one. We just get 4.0 done and then keep moving forward with the new features, which is a good opportunity just in the last couple of minutes, because I do want to save some time for some of your questions. So I would, before I talk about these, please do, if you have questions, ask them. And a reminder, please don't ask them in the chat because it's hard to spot them amongst the general chat. There is the Q&A button, which opens up and lets you ask questions, and those we see much more clearly and easier. So if you have asked a question in a chat, please do repost it in the Q&A section. That would be wonderful. So yeah, longer term future for Node-RED. I will say, so there's a whole bunch of, these are sort of bigger ideas. A lot of them we've talked about quite a lot, and I know I have talked about publicly a lot, but I kind of wanted to re-mention them, reassuring they haven't gone away. They're still things we're thinking of. Splitting up the flow file. So right now, when you're running locally, you've just got this one JSON file. It's difficult to do version control if you aren't using the built-in projects feature of Node-RED. If you have lots of function nodes, it's hard to, it's one thing to diff JSON, it's another to diff JavaScript embedded inside JSON. It doesn't make for a great developer experience. So we've talked around this idea of modifying the core of Node-RED to split up the flow file into a more structured set of files that are better for version control, or other ideas. I mean, one came out the other day of actually, what if the flow file was actually a little SQLite database? Because SQLite is getting pretty ubiquitous, and what if type. So they are very much what ifs now. I'm not sure we will go that direction, but suddenly, looking at how we can improve version control for the flow file. There are third-party plugins for Node-RED that already do some of that, but they have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. We could try and decide, is it something that the core of Node-RED ought to be able to do by default itself? Concurrent editing is one we've discussed before. Again, it's still one I'd love to spend time on. For those of you who have collaborated with other developers on one Node-RED instance, the user experience is leaves something to be desired. At least you can avoid overwriting each other's changes, but still, it can be a little clunky. So again, this is a topic I want to explore. It might be we do something as a plugin, so not core initially, but and that could simply range from just being aware that there's more than one editor open in one place, to the full Google Docs style of collaboration where you can sort of actually collaborate in real time with each other. Again, it's not a small task, it's a big project. Again, something I think would be a really cool feature to explore, but we'll see. Library sidebar. Now, this screenshot, I mean, this kind of dates how long this one's been lurking in the backlog. But we've got the library feature in Node-RED, makes it super easy to save flows locally or to a shared library and import them. And we have all the example flows that nodes provide that you can import currently from the import dialog. So there's thoughts around actually having a library sidebar, so you can browse your library. And actually, one of the clunky bits about the library is it's importing JSON. It's not, you kind of lose that sense of you're dragging nodes into your workspace. So having a library sidebar that brings back that sort of drag and drop user experience of adding things to the library or pulling things out of your library into your workspace. And the Node-RED flow testing framework, I'm sure I've mentioned this repeatedly, and I've shown this image many times. These are the sketches. We had a great set of working sessions with contributors from Hitachi, where we spent time in front of a whiteboard sketching out a whole bunch of designs for a testing framework. So allowing you to actually create test cases for your flows in Node-RED, and sort of defining lots of ways of building tests. Because there's no reason as a developer you shouldn't be able to test your code, just because it's low code doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to create simple test cases to support your work in the same environment. So again, it's one, I think, something that I think would be quite unique to Node-RED. But again, it's something we just need to get a bit more momentum behind. But there's a lot of design work on the back of this. So if anyone's interested in this, hit me up afterwards and we can talk. So yeah, that's just a scattering of ideas of big themes, and there's a long list of other items that we want to get to. There's improving the autocomplete in the editor so that contrib nodes can actually contribute contributions to the autocomplete. There's been discussions around adding stronger typings to nodes so that nodes can actually declare what structure of messages they publish or expect, so that the editor can help you wire things together and set things properly. A whole bunch of stuff in the runtime. I mean, there's no lack of imagination or ideas, and really, this is where we look to the community for your feedback, your ideas. What's important to you? What would you like to see in Node-RED? And I'm sure there's more ideas, plenty of ideas in the community. So we love to hear them, and I'm sure some of you will have some questions to ask right now about some of that. Otherwise, you can join us in there's the Node-RED forum. There's a Node-RED Slack. Plenty of places for you to get involved with the community. So with that, I'm going to have a quick drink.
Yeah, and so thank you, Nick, and we've got lots of questions. But I guess so if people do want to get involved, do want to give comments, I guess your suggestion is to go onto the Node-RED forum and kind of do a topic there and open a post there, and you and kind of some of the other community members can respond. Is that kind of how people should be kind of providing the feedback and getting involved?
That's a great place to start. As I said, there's a super helpful community in the Node-RED forum, and get started there. If you're interested in contributing code, getting stuck in at that level, then come. As I said, we have a Slack, a channel you're more welcome to sign up to. We do have there's obviously on GitHub, we do have, let me pull it up, Node-RED designs. So this is a repository in the Node-RED organization, which has its own discussion forum, which is much more, shall we say, at a technical level than the community forum. So this isn't support type questions, but it is if there are specific ideas of features and that type of thing, then this is where we try and capture them. So one step removed from the community forum, which is much, covers a much broader range of topics across the whole Node-RED community.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get to some of the questions. The first question was: are there plans to rewrite the core in newer technologies such as Rust, Go, or make use of WebAssembly or .NET Core?
No. I mean, when we say newer, it's always well, frankly, no. So the big strength of Node-RED is those 4,500 third-party nodes, and a rewrite of the core, if it loses compatibility with the Node.js ecosystem, then we lose a lot of the value. I think there are interesting things with WebAssembly and native modules, which Node.js is able to tap into. I think there's some interesting area in that space to explore, but I don't think any sort of fundamental rewrite of the core is on the cards. Okay.
So Ben Orchard has 4 questions about the dashboard, and I'm just going to read them all, and I think you can probably answer these all. Will the new dashboard be mobile responsive? Is it continue to be a single page app? Is it single tenant? And can a multi-user? Or what's the future for multi-user? Do you want to take those one at a time? Or?
Sure. So certainly the intention is Node-RED dashboard had its limits in terms of the layout. It was kind of responsive to a degree, but if you wanted to have layouts that worked well on both desktop and mobile, it got a little awkward. That's certainly a space, we want to help address. And one of the reasons for doing the work on Node-RED on Dashboard 2.0, it just wasn't worth the investment of time in the old dashboard to try and solve these problems, given the end of life technology it was all built on top of. So I can't commit to when or timescales like, but certainly one of the rationale here is building the new dashboard on a technology stack that really does then unlock the ability to go down these routes. And will it do X? Will it do Y? Well, it depends what the community asks for, and it depends what the community demand is. I think that comes down to it. Multi-tenancy, or having the dashboard being able to be more user aware, that is definitely on the radar. And again, it was one of the things that we just decided a year ago. It was just not practical or sensible to try and retrofit into the existing dashboard. So having the dashboards more multi-user aware is certainly something we're looking at.
Okay. I think the single page app is probably basically the multi-tenancy, or is that?
It's sort of. I mean, yes, it is essentially going to be a single page app. One of the differences is we are going to look at the ability to have multiple dashboards from one app rather than the sort of the single dashboard approach of the existing one. So, I think. Wait and see. But like I said, also feedback your requirements and let the team know.
Okay. Next question from Remy. In your palette during the demo, I saw some project nodes. What are those? Thanks. And keep out the node red.
So the project nodes, so these are a FlowForge specific set of nodes we have. So these aren't plain Node-RED nodes. These are nodes that make it super simple when you've got multiple Node-RED instances running in the FlowFuse platform to send messages between them, whether that's running on devices or in the cloud. So they are they act like the link in, link out nodes, but they can send messages between Node-RED instances running in the FlowFuse platform.
So documentation would be on the FlowFuse website.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try and dig up a link to put it in the chat. Can you give info on CPU core and memory requirements for use? We need to take care of the server costs for applications.
Yeah, it's always a bit tricky to give exact numbers on anything. It depends so much on the workload and the style of application you're building. It's certainly you can run a lot on a 256 meg memory with a fraction of a CPU core. You can do quite a lot on. It's one of those. It's super hard to give you an answer that's going to address your requirements for your workflow. So, but it is pretty modest. You can do a lot with a little. So that's.
Are there tools that people can use to estimate kind of when they're running their flows, or is that just kind of more trial by error?
So Node.js does have tooling that you can monitor memory CPU usage. I will say this is something we are about to look at in the context of FlowFuse and how we can better monitor Node-RED instances and report back on that sort of information. But yeah, there are a wealth of tools for profiling Node.js runtimes. I'm not really in a position to point at a single solution for that.
Okay. Is there a plan to improve multi-threading processing?
Certainly, it's one of the challenges with the Node.js runtime, which is singly threaded, albeit its event loop mechanism means it is able to schedule work across multiple cores and the like. There have been side projects looking at distributing Node-RED flows across multiple Node-RED instances. That's something we've talked about before. I think, again, that remains an interesting topic to look at, but nothing specific I can point out right now.
Okay. I'd like to see some canvas management tools, like a tool to insert space above, below, between nodes. Any work being done on these?
Not specifically, but in part, I think that's the first time anyone's suggested quite that set of requirements. I think it's a great set of ideas. So we have got a bunch of tools added recently, which again are now far more discoverable because of the right-click menu, but being able to align nodes, distribute them. But I think, having a set of tools to help you space things out. There's been some discussion again. It comes up from time to time about auto layout of flows. So yeah, I think there's plenty of scope for that sort of stuff.
So this might be a good instance where, David, you could kind of start a forum post on this, and then maybe it'll get converted into a design or an issue on Node-RED repo. Is that correct, Nick? Is that kind of?
Yeah, that'd be a great way to do it. Post your idea, and then we can suddenly capture it, make sure it gets captured.
Okay, perfect. Will it also be a 3.2 release based on Node 16, taking into account the new release cycle you presented? So are you planning a 3.2 that will support?
So one of the things we do say, we do part of our release plan, if I just find it and pull it up, so hopefully you can see it, is we do keep, once we do a 4.0, we will suddenly keep 3.x in a maintenance mode for a good period of time. So we will certainly look at doing maintenance fixes, backporting fixes where there are fixes needed, where there are security issues, that type of thing. So it's certainly the intention to continue doing 3.0 or 3.x maintenance releases. They won't get new features, but certainly from security updates, bug fixes, that type of thing.
All right, there's 4 more questions. We're a bit over time, but I think I think they're pretty short. So let's try and get to them. Very good changes and updates. I can't wait to use them. I noticed that it's not possible to select more than one connection between the nodes. For instance, when trying to delete more than one connection at a time, is it necessary to delete one by one?
So with 3.1, if I hold the control key, you can now select multiple wires and delete them all in one go. So that is something that was in 3.1 that I didn't mention. So
good answer. Good question.
There we are. And this is one of the downsides of 3.1 taking so long. I think I implemented that back in November, maybe. So yeah, I had forgotten about it being a new feature because I'd taken it for granted, but there we are.
Will the old dashboards keep working?
So existing dashboards using the existing Node-RED dashboard, they will carry on working. The new dashboard project they are a new set of nodes. So it's not that you can take an existing dashboard and now just run it with the new set of nodes. So yeah, we spent a long time evaluating any practical path that would enable that, and it just proved too impractical and too costly to try and build that solution. So this new dashboard, they are new nodes. You can have the old dashboard and the new dashboard both installed at the same time, and they all serve 2 separate dashboards. But yeah, so it's your existing dashboards will carry on working with the existing dashboard module, but new work will be coming into the dashboard 2.0, and we think it will be worth the effort to migrate across to the new dashboard. And as I've shown, we've tried to keep a lot of the concepts and a lot of the nodes very familiar, so it shouldn't be too painful an experience to migrate from one to the other.
Okay. As an alternative to rewriting the code with WebAssembly, would you consider testing it to work with the new JavaScript engine, Bun?
Well, I think once Bun actually lives up to its claim that it's a drop-in replacement for Node.js, then we could consider it. I know they did their 1.0 release claiming they're a drop-in replacement. When you go to their docs, you can find quite a long list of Node.js APIs they don't currently implement. So I'm all for multiple JavaScript runtimes out there. I think it's good for the JavaScript ecosystem. But again, from a practical point of view, we are built on Node.js, and if things aren't compatible with Node.js, or if they're missing Node.js APIs, then it's not just the core of Node-RED, it's all of the third-party modules we depend on. But yeah, it's exciting to see how Bun gets on. If they get to the point where there is compatibility, then that's awesome, and it'll be great to see the impact that has.
Yeah, we've got 3 more. 2 people snuck some more in, so you okay to keep going? Or
yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Very serious question. What happened to Nick's study room? We're missing these gadgets. Come on, Nick. Where's Star Wars?
So the truth of the matter is, my daughter kicked me out of that room, so I'm in a different room. But all of my Star Wars stuff is on the wall for me to enjoy. Unfortunately, you don't get to see it, but no, maybe next time I will have finally sorted out some sort of a background that you can be distracted by whilst I talk.
Well, a piano is fine. So
there's a piano.
Your musical self comes out now. So what is your suggestion for offloading process to handle the single threading?
Again, great question. It depends on the nature of the workload you want to do. Node-RED makes it super simple to integrate with other systems. You could have more than one Node-RED instance. You could use MQTT, or in FlowFuse context, the project nodes, to sort of delegate work out to other Node-RED instances. I think there's, at a very low level, there's the exec node that does let you run system processes and push processing out to other executables. It depends so much, and Node-RED is great at doing the plumbing between different protocols and different systems that I defer to MQTT just because that's my background. I've a long history with MQTT, so but I reckon that's not always going to be suitable for everyone, despite what I may think. And yeah, but I think looking at having a way to have a more distributed runtime is a super interesting topic, and being able to, for example, with the group feature, being able to select some nodes, add some metadata that tells the runtime actually these nodes run in a different Node-RED instance, for example. There's some concepts there which I've talked about before in previous sessions, but it's an interesting area, but one I long for the time to explore properly.
So Nick, would FlowFuse as a capability for doing clustering with Node-RED instances help also for offloading processing?
So certainly in FlowFuse, you can enable the HA mode that will run multiple instances of your flows in parallel. You have to design your flows to understand that you've got two copies of the flows running in parallel, and we will balance workload between them. So that does help to some degree, for sure. I think for some more sort of specialized scenarios, you're always going to need something a bit more than just simply running multiple instances of your entire set of flows. So, but certainly the HA option in FlowFuse is a great way to get started, of just giving yourself that scalability and availability of your flows. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do one last, and then we'll call it a day. Certainly, kind of all questions on the forums. Nick is prolific on the forums, so if you've got up, please do it. So, is there a way to upgrade an existing 3.0.2 Node-RED instance in FlowFuse, or do you need to export?
No, I will quickly show you. So, if you pull up in the FlowFuse dashboard, if you go to your instance settings, you can click change stack, and then you can pick what version of Node-RED. And as you can see, I'm already on 3.1 obviously, because that's what I'm showing you, but you can pick a different version of Node-RED, hit change stack, it will stop your flows and then restart on a whatever version of Node-RED you select from that list. So that's that. And I've just seen this one last question which slipped in, and I will address it because I think it is relevant to the HA conversation. Will Node-RED be able to handle subscribing to a topic from multiple Node-RED instances and only consume the message once to avoid duplicate actions? So yeah, MQTT v5 does support shared subscriptions, where you can subscribe in a share group and the broker will make sure that a message only goes to one of them. So that's in MQTT. That it's an important thing to recognize when you're in HA mode. If you're subscribing to an MQTT broker, you need to use a shared subscription to make sure the work from the broker gets distributed. So there we are.
Nick, it's an amazing achievement to get to 10 years. I've been following Node-RED for a long time, and the community just keeps on growing. So congratulations. I think your leadership is an important part of the success too. So congratulations. And I look forward to the next 10 years too.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ian. And as I say, thank you to everyone in the community for the part you have all played in helping Node-RED become what it has.
All right. Take care, everyone. And as I said, we will send out a recording. It's usually by sometime tomorrow. Okay. Take care. Thank you.
Cheers all.